Hey everybody, are you ready to take the ache out of ACH rules, changes, and updates? Well, can you validate that account? I hope so, because starting on March 19th, 2021, the Supplemental Fraud Detection for Web Debits, better known as the Account Validation Rule, goes into effect. What does that mean? Do I have to validate all my accounts? All accounts? No, not all accounts. But web debits? Yes, yes, yes. This rule will require ACH originators to include account validation within a commercially reasonable fraudulent transaction detection system for the first use of new account information. Did you hear me there? I said this is for the first use of new account information. We're going to get in that commercially reasonable transaction detection system part soon. But let me stress that the account validation process is only for the first use of new account number information. Did he say first use of new account number information? He did. So if a web debit customer authorizes use of an account number that has been previously used successfully for non-web debits, like maybe a tail debit or an other ACH entry, does that mean that the originator has to do an account validation for that account number? No, it's already been used successfully by that originator. Okay, what about this? Well, what if an originator has already validated its existing web debit customer's account number, and then that customer changes the account to a new, different account number that has not ever been used previously and has not been validated in any way? In that case, does the originator have to validate the new number before sending a live transaction? Well, in that case, yes. Yes, they do. Yes, because in that case, they do have to do a validation because the account number provided, it hasn't been used successfully before by that originator and has not been validated in any way. We want to make sure that we're validating them. Okay, does the new rule require that we verify all account numbers for all of our existing web debit customers? That one's going to be a no, and some more no to go with that no. This rule applies on an ongoing, going forward basis and applies to new account numbers obtained for initiating new web debits. The rule does not apply retroactively to account numbers that have already been used for web debits. Does this mean that originators have to also validate ownership of the account? Well, that's going to be a large side of no with a little bit of note to go along with it. The minimum standard imposed by the NACHA operating rules requires originators only to validate that an account is open and accepts ACH entries. How about we move on to that commercially reasonable transaction detection system part? Oh, that's just a mouthful to be able to say, right? Yeah, why don't we make it CRTDS? That gets confusing too. See, currently, ACH originators of web debit entries are required to use a commercially reasonable fraudulent detection system to screen web debits for fraud. This is not new at all. It is an existing screening requirement with web debit account validation. In addition, or let's say supplement, that it will make it explicit that we will now have account validation as part of a commercially reasonable fraudulent transaction detection system. Come on, say it with me. Commercially reasonable fraudulent transaction detection system. Okay, let's move on. Again, the supplemental requirement applies to the first use of an account number or when there are changes to the account number. So just how am I supposed to validate this account? Well, the answer to that is the rule is neutral regarding the specific method or technology to be used to validate the first use consumer account information. It gives you, as the business, the originator, or the financial institution, some flexibility in the methods to employ. Well, what kind of methods are out there to be used? There are actually many different ways, and some of the most popular ones or potential possibilities that I expect to see would be, first of all, just using an ACH pre-note. Yeah, the ACH pre-notification is a great tool. This is actually making use of the pre-note capability within the ACH network. something that is actually highly recommended, not required, but recommended for all entries, not just web debits. But it's not required you do that, okay? What will be required is verification of the account number for web debits before the first time the entry is originated and live. And pre-notes, although they will take a couple of days, they are a very effective method for achieving this. Now again, they will take a couple of days. So another option is going to be the ACH microtransaction verification process. This is when a company sends one or two very small credit ACH transactions, sometimes it's a debit to remove the money, but it's usually a credit, to their customer. The customer then informs the company of what the amount or the amounts were that were deposited or potentially debited from their account. See, this verifies the account number and ensures the customer has the ability to view the account. Not that they own it though. This method, it can be a little faster than the pre-note, but it also requires customer interaction because you are relying on the customer to validate the micro deposit before continuing. But they actually do this in other payment channels and types, so it's not that new, okay? But another option would be a commercially available validation service. What is a commercially available validation service? Okay, this one is actually probably the fastest option, but it can also require additional cost depending on how you use the service. Well, how does it work? Well, some financial institutions and third parties have access to a very large number of accounts and the information that goes along with them. And they offer products that leverage this information to make it easier to be able to quickly do that validation. So what happens is a company can access these services for scoring as to the likelihood of really if the information is correct or not, and being able to get even sometimes some additional information. Now these responses in this scoring, it can be real time, it can be same day, or in some cases it can be next day. And also in some cases can really do more than just validate the account numbers and ownership, including provisions of information on the account itself, like the age of the account and if it has had returns. Think of it like our old check verification systems we've seen for years in the check world. An example of that, well, that would be something like Microbilt. Microbilt has the services that they use to help perform account validation for web debits. Who is this going to impact? Well, I gotta tell you, this is gonna pretty much impact everyone, except for the ACH operators. Well, what do you mean it's gonna impact everyone? Well, for ACH originators, there is the possible retooling of your fraud detection systems, which could also be implementation of a system on behalf of or for your originators who don't do this on their own, and you're going to be providing it for them. So for ODFIs, it is also making sure that your originators are in compliance and could also be having to work with a provider to provide a solution to be able to meet the rule requirements if the originator is unable to do so on their own. For RDFIs, it means they could receive a greater number of ACH pre-notifications or of microtransactions or other account validation requests, because another option is to call up and ask. I don't think many people are going to go with that option though. And for receivers, they may have to go in and perform those transaction verifications. But like I said, they actually already do that for other things in the payments world. So it may not be too bad or too encumbersome on them at all. It's a matter of whether or not you want to go that route. When is this effective? Okay, it is going to be effective March 19th, 2021. That is the effective date for the rule. But I gotta tell you, NACHA is not going to enforce this rule for an additional 1-year period from that effective date, with respect to the covered entities that are working in good faith toward compliance. But it does require additional time to implement solutions, and NACHA is aware of that. NACHA does also strongly encourage all of these entities to work towards compliance as soon as possible. You know what the professor says? I say, don't wait, let's validate. All right, there is still quite a lot happening in the world of ACH in 2021. And the payments professor is here to help you take the ache out of ACH. And before you go, make sure you pay your fee Wait, no, that's in the next class, where we'll need to do some differentiation and applying of fees. Huh, oh well. For now, class dismissed.